resident Reverend Lucille Rosen, I've asked to come up and speak on Rosh Hashanah. And she's a wealth of wisdom, we all know. And sometimes, in life, everybody else gets busy and you get older, and sometimes you feel like you don't have much to share. But we want to remind this woman how much she has to share, how much she means to us, and how honored we are today to listen to whatever you have to say. No pressure. So come on up.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It is such a joy to be here that I feel like just standing here. It's the weirdest feeling. But Rosh Hashanah for me is a very, very special time. When I was little, I would ask my father the weirdest questions. And he never lost his temper. He lost his temper if I didn't ask. Because in Judaica, to ask questions is to be knowledgeable. And to hear the answers and give them back means that you maybe understand a little bit, but at least you're beginning. And Rosh Hashanah is the beginning. It's the end and the beginning. And one of the traditions that we have about Rosh Hashanah is that God opens up the book of life. And you get a chance to ask forgiveness for mistakes you made and to make some promises to God that you'll try very hard to do better this coming year. And my first question was, why? My favorite question to this day, by the way, is why? And my father explained to me that there are two paths to forgiveness on Rosh Hashanah. The first path is to humankind. Things that you did to people, to the human race, whoever they might be, that you feel you need to make amends for. And before Yom Kippur, what you do is make those amends. In no uncertain terms, he told me, you make amends to the human race, one way or another. The second path is to God. And that's a very strange path because there's an inner place of all of us that holds God in great reverence. And when you hold somebody in great reverence, you really rarely make mistakes of the kind that needs forgiveness. Until it was explained even further. But let me start with human race. Those are tough ones. I was a young mother, very, very proud to have a son. My first child was a son. And I guess I fell in love with him the first time he made a squeak. And he made a lot of squeaks, as do most babies. And he was very funny looking. He was so funny looking that I kept him face down in the carriage. I didn't want anybody to see him. He was very funny looking. He had a tough time getting born. Anyway, he was a really good kid. And he started training himself before I had a chance to even suggest it. And this was on Rosh Hashanah that this happened. I grew up in the Bronx, so know that there were the elderly ladies who came down with their folding chairs and monitored you remember? You remember the ladies that monitored? They wondered what you wore, what time you came down, how did you do your laundry, whether the diapers were dry by the nighttime so they didn't hang out. There was a group of elderly ladies who actually did this. And there was one elderly lady there that I couldn't stand. She was the leader of the pack. And she watched every move I made because I had a son. And that was very special. Anyway, it was Rosh Hashanah, and I was on my way walking, of course, to my mother and father's apartment so that we could go to temple together with my son. And he looked up at me, and he was the kind of kid that didn't say dada in his entire life. What he said was very clear all the time. His elocution was astounding. And he looked up at me in the carriage and he said, "I need to go." And I said, "Oh, gee, we don't have time to go upstairs. Come downstairs and first go to temple." So I've seen other people do it, so I did it. I took him behind a car and I let him go. And she was furious. This lady who monitored my life came over to me and said, "That's a disgrace, and I don't ever want to see that again. It's disgusting." And I looked at her, I said, "Mind your own business." And I walked away. And Rosh Hashanah was coming. And I knew I was wrong. So I spoke to my father, and I spoke to my mother, and then I spoke to my rabbi. And the rabbi said, "You're wrong?" I said, "Yes, I was wrong." He said, "Go fix it." Okay. The next day was the day before Rosh Hashanah. And I walked over to her, and I said, "Marg, I want to apologize for the way I behaved yesterday. Please forgive me." And she looked at me and started to cry. And she said, "You are the epitome of Rosh Hashanah right now." And she gave me a hug. She said, "I follow you because I think you're a good woman and you're just coming into yourself." And I said, "All I want to do is the right thing. That's all I want. And this is the path I'm supposed to take. I will." So we hugged each other, and that was the end of that. We never spoke again, by the way. But I let my parents know what I had done. And my father said to me, "Making amends is God's way of giving you a way of forgiving yourself." And therefore, what Rosh Hashanah means is that not only do we forgive others, but we learn how to be honest and forgive ourselves. And so, every Rosh Hashanah Eve, I think of the year back, and I say to myself, to whom do I make amends this year? And my next question was, what if you do if they died? How do you make amends to somebody who died? And the answer I got was that you write them a letter and then go in the backyard and burn the letter, because that smoke is holy. It has forgiveness in it, and it rises up to God, and God forgives you just the way you are beginning to forgive yourself. And that's Rosh Hashanah for me. Rosh Hashanah and forgiveness comes together. Making amends comes together to make my life a little bit better when the time comes on a Friday night and I have food and somebody else doesn't. Because one of the things I was taught when I was little is that we donate food to the temple no matter how little we have. It's more than somebody else has. And so you share what you have, whatever it is. And if you made some mistakes during the week, you talk to God and ask forgiveness, and that you'll try and do better next week. So we have a list of things in our own heads that says Rosh Hashanah, Day of Prayer. The days of penitence between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is spent in prayer, in examination of my own soul, so that when the next week and the next year comes, my soul is cleaner than what it was. We all have that chance every year. And isn't that a wonderful thing? That no matter what happens, you and I have the chance to be friends with God, to say, I'm sorry, I'll try and do better next time. The most wonderful thing there is the next thing. I forgive myself for making the mistakes, and I'll try to do better next time. I wish everybody a wonderful, happy, healthy New Year, and forgive yourself and rejoice in the person you are.